one of the persons who is objecting to your getting out is the father of the little girl. What
Yes,
do we
sir.
say to him that I'm voting to let you out? You've done this, and I'm interested in knowing to make sure it's not going to happen again to someone.
We're about to watch a 2020 parole hearing. Yeah, I thought that we'd go back into the archive and pull out some of the treasures, some of the classics. We have Keith Jones, who you might not be familiar with. I kind of like him. And anyways, we're going to go into this Roche parole hearing. I'm not going to share any additional information than what you've already seen, but Mr. No Way Roche, he might bring out some facts that will shock you. And with that, let's jump in.
I have Christopher Lee Reed, 580006, a first-class offender, indecent behavior with a juvenile, serving 15 years, 10 years suspended, and parole date is August 28, 2020. Good time date, he is not eligible, and a full-term date is August 27, 2025. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
Please answer Mr. Marabella's questions.
Mr. Reed, good morning. My name is Tony Marabella. How are you?
Doing good.
Mr. Reed, I've got several questions for you that I'd like to go over. How old are you right now?
I'm 36. I'll be 37 next week.
And you've been in jail for 10 years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
This was your first offense?
Yes, sir.
You've done some programs while you've been there. What sort of programs have you done?
The first thing I did was get my GED. I completed that in 2012. Shortly after that, Phelps shut down. They brought us here to Angola. I was in the Phelps reentry program, so I got my 100-hour pre-release. Also got the classes outside of 100-hour pre-release, anger management, inside outside dad, the substance abuse programs. Since then, I got my VOTEC masonry program. After that, the next opportunity that came up to me was the Ashland University program. I'm in college course. I'm trying to attain my associate's degree right now. I've also completed the ICC program, which was a computer program.
All right. Your last write-up was in 2015 for contraband. What was that?
I had an episode with the drug mojo. I had a little time in my life where I made a bad decision. Looking back on it, I'm glad it happened. It opened my eyes to drugs. It gave me a good perspective on I don't want any of that in my life anymore.
Tell me about your previous drug use.
Ever since I was about 19, I tried marijuana, a couple other drugs. I've done some ecstasy, did some meth. Never really considered myself to have a problem with it because I never felt addicted to any of it.
Well, how do you feel now?
Now I understand that anytime you accept drugs in your life, you can consider yourself addicted because it's a decision that doesn't need to be in your life.
Have you ever had treatment on the outside?
On the outside, no.
How about on the inside? What treatment have you had while you've been in prison?
I've gone to the NA, the Narcotics America Associations. I've been to the AA meetings. And like I told them, I've been going to those because there was a time when I could see myself getting out and possibly doing that again. And I didn't want that in my life.
Doing what again?
Drugs.
Do you believe AA is going to be as important to you?
Yes. Through those programs, talking about these things, bringing some thoughts in my mind that was just there and actually speaking about them has definitely helped me.
All right. Mr. Reed, I want to talk to you a little bit about the offense.
Yes, sir.
Tell me why you did what you did. What was going on with you?
Drugs at the time. Also, just I didn't have a good sense of responsibility at that time.
I mean, do you realize what you did?
Yes.
Do you realize how horrible that is?
Yes, I do. I'm very sorry for that. Nothing made me do it. There were influences in my life that pushed me in that direction. But going and just soul searching myself in these 10 years, I can't say that anything made me do it. I made the decision, I did it, and I have to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you, when you were mentioning the programs that you did, you didn't mention anything about the sex offense treatment that you've had. You've done phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that right?
I have.
Tell
Yes,
me,
sir, I have.
tell me what you've learned out of that. Tell me how that to convince me that you're not going to do something like this again.
Yes,
I can't possibly vote to let you out if I have a belief that you.
Yes, sir. At first, when I was first in those programs, I came up to a wall. I didn't want to believe that because I made that offense that I was always going to be considered a sex offender. I had to come over that wall in that program. Learning the 27 risk factors, and learning the course of that program, you learn that it's not about considering yourself a sex offender. It's about helping you control your thoughts. The 27 risk factors, they appear in your thoughts throughout the day, or your actions. And it's there to help you manage those thoughts, manage those actions. I actually facilitated that course for about a year and a half until we had another offender that decided that he wanted to also facilitate it, and I stepped down. And that was one thing that I always tried teaching those guys was to try to see the 27 risk factors in your daily lives. Try to see it in your actions. Try to see them in other people's actions. And a lot of these programs that we've taken here, that's one thing that I've learned from them. If you can identify a problem and you can think about the problem, then you can find the solution to the problem.
Tell me about how those programs that you took directly relate to you in the commission of the offense that you committed. Because I asked you earlier, why did you do it? And you said, I don't really know, I was on drugs. Well, that's not a good enough answer for me.
I understand.
I'd like to know what you learned in the sex offender programs to determine what it is that caused you or what contributed you to do that, and what you learned that will prevent you, or what tools you have to prevent that in the future.
All right. From the sex offender program, I learned that I hate to say it, but I was grooming this young lady. I learned that I had some very, very bad sexual lapse that were that were happening to me at that time. Through these programs, I've learned to identify these moments. I've learned that I needed some help, and I'm gonna need help. Mr. Tony, can you be a little bit more specific on what you're looking for me to answer?
Well, this is my concern, okay? A minute ago, you said you were concerned about being labeled a sex offender and that you were on drugs when you did it. Now I'm hearing you be a little more honest about, hey, what was going on with me? I was grooming this little girl. I had these tendencies. I was doing these things, okay? I
Yes, sir.
want to know that you recognize that problem, you've addressed it, and you have some tools to be able to make sure it's not going to happen. That's what I'm interested in. Let's go back to the question. You are a sex offender.
Yes, sir. Like I said,
You obviously have, from your classes, you've learned that you, at least back then, had those tendencies.
yes, sir.
So how have you changed? One of the persons who is objecting to your getting out is the father of the little girl. What
Yes,
do we
sir.
say to him that I'm voting to let you out, you've done this, and I'm interested in knowing to make sure it's not going to happen again to someone?
Who I was back then is not who I am today. Those tendencies that I had back then, I've identified them. The sex offender program helped me identify them. I can definitely understand the thought process that I had back then that led me to make that decision.
Do you think it's possible you could have those thoughts again?
No, I mean, the thought, I can understand it, the thought may be there, but I've learned managing techniques.
Well, tell me the techniques you've learned to manage it.
The sex offender program was one of them. The 27 risk factors help you identify these thoughts whenever they pop up in your head.
Okay.
Once you identify them, and you know they're there, now you have the tools came from that program.
What are the tools?
Being able to identify, being able to understand that that's something that shouldn't be, that's something that needs to be identified and addressed.
How do you address it? You see a little girl, you have those tendencies, you have those beliefs. What do you do?
All right. In the program, there's this broken.
Well, I know what the program says. What are you going to do if you get out and you have those tendencies?
If I have those tendencies again, I'm gonna seek help.
And what kind of help are you going to seek?
Professional help, help from family, help from friends that could help me in that situation. But honestly, Mr. Tony, I don't see myself ever having those thoughts ever again, or having those tendencies ever again. I understand that as an offender, you probably hear that a lot. I promise you that's being sincere from me.
What is your transition plan? You're going to be working at a daycare facility for animals, I assume. Is that right?
No, sir, that changed. There's a halfway house in Lacombe that is going to accept me if I get out. And from what I understand, they have contracts with some of the businesses around the area. They could assist me in getting a job through them. The animal daycare was through my brother, but that changed. The Bayou Lacombe Outreach Foundation is the halfway house that I applied for. They contacted me and told me that I was acceptable to go there if y'all grant me parole. I'll be going there and trying to get back on my feet, working fast food jobs, maybe some stocking jobs in a food place. And once I am able to support myself on my own, I'll move away from there. I've worked in the plants ever since I was about 19 in the Lake Charles area. And one of the jobs that I had was scaffolding. That's a job.
Let me ask you this. What made you change your plans from going? Weren't you supposed to go to Lafayette?
I was. My brother will be able to answer that question.
Work in Scott, Louisiana?
Sorry, Mr. Tony, I missed that.
What did you say?
I'm sorry.
I asked about going to Lafayette. Did you say your brother would answer that?
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Roche.
Good morning, Mr. Reed. How are you?
How are you doing, sir? Doing good.
I have a couple of simple questions.
Yes, sir.
First of all, have you had any formal substance abuse treatment since incarceration?
Yes, sir.
And tell me, what program did you complete?
Completed the AA program.
Sir, have you had any organized professional substance abuse treatment, AANA, or meetings where you talk and you help each other keep off drugs and alcohol? What program have you completed?
To my knowledge, I haven't.
So, and when I say program, I'm talking Don Francois, Blue Walters, Louisiana Risk Management 1 and 2, Steve Hall. Have you completed any of those programs?
No, sir.
And you are an offender who's a sex offender and an abuser of drugs and alcohol, and you have not taken any substance abuse treatment. Second question. You've been incarcerated for 10 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
At the time of the offense, your victim was 4 or 5 years old. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So your victim is still a juvenile. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Who's still emotionally affected by this offense.
Yes, sir.
And she feels safe with you incarcerated.
Yes, sir.
And I think she needs to feel safe until she reaches the age where she can handle what happened to her. And I would think she would have to be 18 or older to do that. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Roche. I don't have any questions. Mr. Guillory? There you go. What would you like to tell us?
So for the first few years of my brother's incarceration, I kind of stayed away from it. I realized the severity of what he's done. I had to struggle with it. I have family members with young daughters and stuff as well, so I thought about them. I thought about all the bad things, right? And so you sit in that dark room in your mind with all these bad thoughts. And so for about the first 5 years of his incarceration, I did not even entertain talking to him or visiting him. Then one day I found out he was in Angola, and I decided to go visit with him, me and my wife. We went and visit. He was in the general area. Felt it was a good visit. And we discussed a lot of the stuff that happened, his thoughts about it, what he's learned in the 5 years he was there. So, it made me turn around a little bit. I mean, he is my brother, right? His family. But it doesn't extricate himself from being the man of what he did at that time. So we leave that. I started visiting him probably once every few months, helping him out when I can with clothing and stuff like that they let you do. And then we started emailing via JPay and all that stuff. Well, the more I visited with him, the more I felt that he is very sorry for what he's done. He's apologized to me, but over the course of time, the apologies didn't keep coming, but you could still feel that, he has accepted his responsibility as what he did. And so the meetings got a little bit more lighthearted. We started bonding like brothers would again. And so, and then every once in a while I'll throw him the curveball. Okay, what's going to happen when you get out? What do you plan to do? And, I guess it's still overwhelming for him, having been away from public life for 10 years, of what he can do. So he took his masonry class. He has scaffolding experience. I felt he could get out there and get right back to work. And so to me, I think, and I'm here as for him to hopefully get parole and get out there and start over. I'm always about second chances. And I believe that Christopher has paid his time, his dues. I realize what Mr. Roche said about that young lady, and I feel for her every day. And we all do. And everybody in this room will be in agreement about that, even Chris. So, if he's parole, I don't think he should go anywhere near Lake Charles. Does that mean a restraining order against the city? I don't know, but he's going to be on the other side of the state, possibly working, getting out there. But Mr. Roche brought up another point too that I felt valid, was that he didn't take any active participation in a true substance abuse program, and I would beg for him to do that when he gets out, if possible, or if not, do it when he's in there. But I do pray that he is going to move forward from this. He has a young man. His son is 19 years old now. I would like to see them get back together, and might make him be that man that we always want our citizens to be, or me, myself, because I'm a father of 2 boys. And so, but yeah, I'm just, now, as far as his paperwork saying he was going to come work with me in my business in Scott, that really isn't my business. It's my wife's business. And so after further discussion with her, we couldn't come on an agreement that that's going to happen. So I reached out to him to try to find other ways to get work. And the guy in Lacombe was very amicable. I talked to him. He can get Christopher a job. I was going to loan him, give him a little bit of money to get started and a cell phone so he can get back to work and be a productive citizen. So that's all I have right now, unless somebody has a question for me.
Thank you, Mr. Guillory. Warden Vinoy,
Yes, sir.
what can you tell us about Mr. Reed?
Well, he kind of went through his record. He came here from Phelps closed. He's been at Camp C that whole time since he's been here, I think.
I've spent some time at Main Prison.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He's got that one write-up for Mojo back in 15. And other than that, he's a tutor. We don't have, he's not a disciplinary problem here at all.
All right. Thank you, Warden.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed,
Yes, sir.
what would you like to say to us before we vote?
I'd like for y'all to all understand that I do understand the severity of my offense. I understand that I did a terrible thing to a very young lady, a very young girl. I spent about 1.5 years struggling with that, and struggling with what made me do that, or what influenced me to do that. Trying to answer those questions. I did discover the influences and stuff. I understand I'm not being forthright on all that. It's a lot of personal stuff. But I want y'all to understand that I do understand those thoughts and those processes that made me do that. I can honestly tell y'all that I do not see myself ever doing that again. I want to have a second chance. I want to prove that I can be a productive citizen. I can do the right things. I thank y'all for giving me this opportunity.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reed. Is the panel prepared to vote?
Yes.
Mr. Marabella?
Mr. Reed, I've reviewed your record, and you know, you've been a good prisoner. You have very few write-ups. You've done fairly well while you've been in prison. After reviewing your record, I was on the fence, and my notes were to myself, depending on how he responds to the questions about sex offender treatment, will determine whether or not I decide to vote to grant or not. It troubled me, some of your answers about your sex offense treatment. Initially, you blamed it on drugs, and then later, as I talked to you a little more, you conceded you had those tendencies, you were grooming her, etc. I was pressuring you to try to give me some tools. You spouted a lot of learning that you have. I didn't hear a whole lot of what you're going to do if you get those concerns again. It may very well be, as Mr. Roche pointed out, since you haven't had any drug treatment, substance abuse treatment, perhaps those two things may join each other and give you the tools to be able to do those things. Based upon that, based upon the seriousness and the nature of this offense, and the young victim who is still a juvenile, I'm going to vote to deny your parole.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Mr. Roche?
Mr. Reed, before I deliver my decision, I want to take a little different approach. You made a statement that you didn't want to hurt the girl. This was not a girl. This was a child. This was not someone 15, 16 years old. This was a 4-year-old who had no idea of what you were doing. This was a child. Saying that, my vote is the same as Mr. Marabella for the same reasons.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed, my vote is the same as my colleagues. Something I'd like to mention to you is you were asked questions about substance abuse treatment, and you've done AA, and that's great. AA and NA is wonderful on the outside. It's how I stay sober, for example. But substance abuse treatment is offered within our correctional system that is much better than that, much more intense than that. When you were asked about why you did what you did, the first place you went with your answer was drugs. That was your first answer.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, I think that I think you told yourself a lot, and you told us a lot, and I think that the questions about your lack of treatment are pretty valid. And if I were you, if I were sitting where you're sitting, I'd resolve to do something about it.
Yes,
So,
sir.
Good luck to you, Mr. Reed. Your parole today has been denied.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.
4 years old. 4 years old. So when I was listening to this, I didn't first read Sir Richard's notes. So I'm going through the experience like what's going on? And all of a sudden, all the way at the end of the hearing, Mr. O'Shea brings up the fact that she's 4 years old. A classic Roach. And I purposely didn't bring, sometimes when I do the pre-vocal, right, I bring in something impactful from the hearing, but I wanted you to have the same or at least similar experience that I had when I first listened to it. Because you're just like, okay, how old was she? What's going on here? And then all of a sudden it comes out and you're just sitting there shocked. And this is, again, the emphasis of how important it is to have certain parole board members on the board. In the other states that we cover, like Connecticut and Iowa and Utah, and it's like you can so often have parole board members that he tried. Then I looked into Sir Richard's notes, and Sir Richard must have put these notes in way over a year ago. I'm going through some of these hearings that I covered, maybe don't have views, or I haven't covered yet. And I mean, I totally forgot if I had covered this one or not. But he was trying to avoid. I agree with Sir Richard's notes. He was trying to avoid bringing up that why he's in there. Like he did not. They had to bring up. Did you take sex offender programs? Did you he thought that he could manipulate his way through the hearing without saying it. You mentioned how Keith Jones shook his head when he said, "I completed AA." And Keith Jones, you have Mr. Mirabella, and then you have Keith Jones. Keith Jones is an admitted recovering alcoholic. This is something that he proudly says it here in this hearing. And this is, you might pick up on it now. Mr. Mirabella references his good friend who's always in AA, and that's Keith Jones. I like Keith Jones. He seems to have a kind soul, someone who I would want as like a mentor. But it's even though he gets really into his AA stuff, but that's not the point. I do want to give a shout out to the supporting brother and the supporting brother's wife for turning down that job. Can you imagine hiring someone who does this to a 4-year-old to work in an animal nursery? It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, just the word nursery. You can't work in any place that has the word nursery. I don't care if it's a tree nursery or an animal nursery, but if it says nursery, and you can't work in there. I don't care if it's about plants. It's insane. 4 years old, and he's using the word woman. And thank goodness Mr. O'Shea with the mic drop. Are you kidding me? What? 4 years old? 4 years old. Cockroach. And the brother, it was like, I guess the most real supporting statement that we've seen for someone in this nation, I think, right? Like, I think the only way that you can go more is to just not show up at all, or not make a comment, but to say, I don't know if you'll ever get someone that would, right, if your support. So it was, at least he's not an enabler. Okay, I did not plan on doing this, but I had made an Iowa recording, which I was about to publish. And then about a week later, I make this Louisiana recording. And I said, you know what? These would be great to mold together because they're similar. But I think one of the major differences is the parole board. So I'm about to play an Iowa parole hearing. Those of you who are not familiar, I have a second channel where I cover parole hearings from other states, not Louisiana. So we cover Iowa, we cover Connecticut, we cover Utah, we cover Illinois. Sometimes we splash in things from Vermont and a couple other states as well. So buckle up and let's go. But please keep in mind that I did not, this hearing is a completely different date and time. So I'm not going to unpack it with comparing any of the similarities. Let's go.
And the reason I did what I did was because of my own insecurities and my way I looked at myself, my low opinion of myself. And I really, if it wouldn't have been that young gal, it would have probably been some other woman, because I was just going around trying to look for new reasons to validate myself, and to make myself feel better, like most guys that go out and do drugs. Well, I was going out and sleeping around, and I was using that to always finding a new partner to revalidate myself, to make myself feel better, to make myself feel like, hey, I'm wanted.
This is just part of the answer, the explanation that he gives to the parole board when asked about why he should be given parole. What caused him to do these things to a 12-year-old? Now, let's see if the parole board corrects him or answers him or puts anything into perspective than just about, I don't know, dating and calling them women and everything else that he's going to go on and say in this hearing. I'll unpack it at the end.
Yes, sir.
All right, so going back to the beginning, what were or what was some of the things that led to you being incarcerated?
Well, I had had my parole revocated once, and then when I had gotten out, I went to the RTF in Sioux City. Basically, what it boils down to was me acting impulsively and not really following the rules of the RTF. And a lot of my mental health comes into play with that too, I believe. But it comes to me, I ended up absconding from custody from the RTF. And roughly 10 days later, they found me, and that's why I'm here today. It was really just a lot of technical stuff I got in trouble for, no drug use or anything like that. Just, breaking little rules here and there, and then it adds up. And then eventually, I wasn't comfortable with the way I was being treated at the RTF. I'm not gonna lie to you. And that's initially what made me abscond from custody.
Okay. When I hear you say that you weren't happy, can you give us a brief understanding of what that unhappiness was for you?
Well, for example, now I'm very open about my mental health, and I had spoke with employees like the resident officers and my counselor there about it. They told me that if I ever had any problems to come and talk to them. And well, there was one specific day that I went to go talk to them, and there was a gentleman named Mark, and he's a resident officer there. And my counselor was in there with him, along with another resident officer named Deb. And I went to Mark and I said, hey, I need to speak to Whitney, who was my counselor. I said, I'd like to speak to her. I'm having some issues with my mental health. And I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and stuff. And the way he responded is what kind of set me up, because he kind of leans back and he's like, oh, I'm sure we all want to hear this one. And Deb behind him said, what? He's like, oh, Mr. Mead wants to talk to Whitney because he's having troubles with his mental health. Very condescending, and Whitney, she didn't even acknowledge me. And I'm not asking to be babied. I'm not asking to be babied, but why tell me to come, to you if I'm having troubles and then just kind of ignore me? And at that point, I just said, you know what, man, I was like, never mind. And then I went to my room, and I believe it was actually the next day is when I absconded from custody.
Okay. And when you were going through that frustration, and I heard you mention Wendy, who appeared, Whitney?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Whitney, and you felt that she came to your aid or kind of saw things that, you were feeling. Did it occur to you to even maybe see if you could talk with her about what you were feeling?
Up until then, Whitney was great. She was very attentive and very, I would having troubles, and I would even write things like poetry and songs and stuff, and she would let me read them to her. She was really cool. It was just that situation. It would just seem like, and like I said, I don't want to be babied, but she didn't even acknowledge, they were all sitting right there together, and I know she heard me, and I felt like he was being very condescending. And at that point, I was so frustrated. I was like, heck with it. I don't even want to talk to you about it if this is the way you're going to treat me about it. And it was just very aggravating. And I felt, well, if I've been at the point with my mental health where I wanted to self-harm, and I'm doing great now. I'm happy, but it's just, what if I would have been there? What if that's where I was at that point in time, mentally? which I wasn't, but you know, who knows where their actions could have took me after that, you know, and don't get me wrong, you know, I broke the rules and I did get in trouble, and you know, I'll take ownership for all that, and I'll take ownership for running. But I just want to make it clear as to why I did run.
Okay. And when you did run from what you recall, what you remember, how long was that?
Oh, maybe 10 days, I think.
Oh, 10 days?
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
They got me at my doctor's office.
Oh.
Yeah, well, and because I didn't have any of my medications, so I set up an appointment to go see my doctor. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's kind of funny because it was really dumb of me to do it, but that's where they got me, and you know that's the story.
No, humor is humor, and it's abound in how it can touch you. And we saw that you were touched by that humor, and you had that aha moment at your doctor's office.
I'm 43 years old. You know, I started doing time when I was 33, and you know, I've done a lot of growing up, but it's taken a lot of messing up for me to grow up, and really, and I took treatment really serious this time too, you know, and I take the tools that I've learned in there, and that's really helped me too, just to kind of, I know there's times where I really need to kind of regulate myself and my behavior, and really value what's important to me in life, you know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to conclude my questions for now. Who knows? I may come back with one or two more, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it on and see if my colleagues have anything. With that being said, Meredith.
Yeah, I think I just have a couple of questions for you. Because it looks like you did SOTP at Newton and completed it in July. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the things that you learned about yourself as far as, you know, cognitive distortions and any, you know, risky behaviors or red flags that you need to look out for?
And that's actually like an awesome question, because I've learned a lot. And, you know, at a very young age, I developed a drug habit. And I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase arrested development. And, you know, I was doing a lot of drugs at a young age, and that really kind of suppressed a lot of my growing up. You know, it took a lot longer for me to grow up, because doing those drugs during adolescence, you know, that really suppresses a lot of stuff. And this is just kind of realizations that I've come to. And, you know, I'm actually starting to look at things as an adult now, as silly as it kind of sounds. And I've learned to love myself. And as far as cognitive distortions and stuff, that, you know, I can maybe pinpoint a couple of those that I would use to justify the things that I would do in the past in order to make myself okay with it, you know. But really now I'm able to see those for what they are. So I don't tell my things in order to, you know, tell myself things to justify, you know, like if I'm going to do something, I want to do it, you know, for the right reasons. Not, I don't know if I'm getting my point across right. I shouldn't have to talk myself into doing something. If I have to talk myself into doing something, I probably shouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
what were the distortions that you were able to identify that you used?
you know, like, and I committed my crime over 10 years ago, but you know, it's, I'm not minimizing that. I just, you know, when I had abused that young lady, excuse me, I told myself, you know, hey, I was doing it at that age, so what's wrong with it? You know, I mean, and that was major one, you know, and I know now that obviously that's not okay, and even though I justified it, it's still not okay. And that was a major one, and I would kind of use like, because I kind of rough growing up, and I would kind of use that as a crutch too, that hey, I had a crappy upbringing, maybe, hey, show me some sympathy, and that's not, I mean, to a point it's okay, and some people can show empathy about that, but it's not very realistic in real life. I can't expect everybody to feel sorry for me. It's just something I got to kind of deal with on my own and get past.
Okay. And then what do you think you need out in the community in order to avoid another revocation?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think it'll be fine this time. I think as long as, I'm not blindsided by my parole officer. And what I mean by that is just knocking out my door. Hey, you're screwing up. Here's the cuffs, like that would help. And I'll communicate that with them, but I think maybe if, as far as like smartphones and stuff like that, I think if maybe they put their parental control software on there, that'd probably be a good idea. At least then I can show that I'm trustworthy. And I'll continue, going to therapy and going to aftercare and stuff like that. And I honestly feel very confident and very good about it this time around, and I'm not really scared, a little anxious, but not scared.
Okay. Are you going to be going back to the same counselor that you've seen before, or are you going to need to start with someone new?
If she's available, I would like to. I have heard from another fella, I believe he actually seen the parole board today, a gentleman named Visser that I was in class with. He was seeking aftercare and therapy through a gentleman in South Sioux City, Nebraska. And I got the name of the business. I'm going to look into that and see kind of if I can, knock off two birds with one stone there.
Okay.
But I would like to, I believe though that the one I was seeing, she conducted SOTP out on the street, but I believe she may have retired. But that's just from what I've heard.
It sounds like you're at least exploring what options are available to you, which is good.
I've always been open about my mental health. And I have to, because even when it comes to working a job, it can affect that. And where I've kind of butted heads with POs before is they're like, well, everybody gets anxiety. Well, no, not everybody gets anxiety like me. You know what I mean? Like, and one of my plans is to file for Social Security. I've contacted an attorney on that, and I do plan on like maybe trying to work some part-time hours. And I'm looking into furthering some education too.
Okay. Well, I guess 2 follow-up questions from that. And then, would this be a new application for Social Security disability, or have you had it in the past?
This is going to be new, but like I said, I got some help with the situation, and I've found that given the amount of time that I have done incarcerated, that will actually help in the approval process of getting it. I've written the Social Security office; they've written me back. Took about 4 months, but they wrote me back, and they even give me a reference number. They said that once I file to actually send the letter that they gave me back with it, it's got some kind of reference number on there. So it sounds like it's probably not going to be as hard to get it.
Okay. And then what kind of work do you think you'll be able to do part-time?
Honestly, what I would like to do is I really enjoy helping people, and I would love to find something to help people with, like in recovery, stuff like that. Even if it's at first on volunteer basis, it's something I'm really passionate about. But but realistically, I think I would probably end up going through some type of staffing agency, and there's a lot of factory jobs around there in Sioux City. So I don't think once I get some part-time work, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering my questions. I think that was all I had.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Meredith. Jesse.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Mead. I'm Jesse. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I was listening to you when we first started and you were describing how you felt that your PO or whoever it was being kind of condescending. But I'm looking at some of the reports. It looks like you were self-sabotaging. I mean, you got caught with vape pens, you got caught with pictures, you got caught with contraband. Before all this happened, what was the real reason you absconded? Was it for drugs or was it because you were offended?
I don't do drugs.
Okay.
So no, that's definitely not the reason there. There was accusations of that. As far as the pictures, those were album art that I had put on my phone, and they accused me of having a picture that objectified women. And you'd have to see it was just album. When I put a bunch of music on my phone, some album art went on there with it, and that's what it had to do with. But that got straightened out. The vape pen, I'm dead to rights, guilty on that. I did have a vape pen in my bag. Like I said, it probably does seem like self-sabotage because, I was being impulsive and I wasn't, self-regulating. I wasn't, paying attention to how I was acting. I was just doing what I darn well pleased, and that's what it come down to. I can't lie to you about it. And I'm sure that might have some of the reason why they were kind of harping on me more than they probably normally would, which in return, it had some effects on my mental health too, so and I'm being realistic about it. But it got to the point where I didn't know how to handle it. So I did what I did, and to be honest with you, and that 10 days that I was gone on the run, the only thing I did was watch movies and drive around and walk around in the state park, enjoy nature. And I was happy. I was relaxed. I wasn't stressed, but I went about it the wrong way. And if I could do it again, I'm a little more level-headed now. I believe I'd probably make a different choice.
So considering your original crime, what steps will you take not to reoffend? What will be some of the red flags you will avoid?
To be honest with you, sir, I couldn't do that again to another person. Not only, did I affect that young lady's life, I affected her family's life, maybe her extended family, my family. And I can say that I'm not going to do it again all day long. And, you don't know that. I get it. You don't know me. I don't want to hurt people. You know what I mean? And I don't feel that's in my nature. And the reason I did what I did was because of my own insecurities and my way I looked at myself, my low opinion of myself. And I really, if it wouldn't have been that young gal, it would have probably been some other woman, because I was just going around trying to look for new reasons to validate myself, and to make myself feel better, like most guys say, go out and do drugs. Well, I was going out and sleeping around, and I was using that to always finding a new partner to revalidate myself, to make myself feel better, to make myself feel like, hey, I'm wanted. And that's the reality of it. And I know that now. And actually treatment helped me out a lot with that too, just realizing why I did what I did.
Well, I appreciate that. That was a super honest answer saying if it wasn't that girl, it could have been somebody else. And at that time, so do you feel confident now that there will not be a somebody else?
Sir, I can guarantee you there would never be any else.
I appreciate that. I have no more questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Any follow-up, anyone? Okay. I thought I was going to have some questions, but you answered them with the questions you answered for both my colleagues. So with that being said, Mr. Mead, I'm going to turn it back to you. This is your chance to give us any additional information you would like for us to know before we go into deliberations.
I honestly, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me and taking what I say to heart, and I appreciate that. You know, like I said, I feel like I have a better outlook on things now, and I think that as long as I'm transparent with my parole officer and I get the therapy that I need, I think everything will be okay this time. I'm not really out there, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened. My parents' health is getting bad, and I want to really, cherish the time that I have left with them, and I think that's one of the main things that are motivating me today too, is the time with my parents, because they're getting up there, and my mom's not doing too well health wise either, and I want to take what time I can with her, and and they need help too, because they're getting older. Dad can't really mow and shovel the lawn and shovel the walk anymore. My mom's kind of, I think she might be getting some dementia or something, but that's what's important to me, is to be able to get out, stay out, and spend time with them.
Okay. Thank you for that last bit of information. What we're going to do is go into deliberation. So you sit back, don't engage us, but just sit back, listen, and then I'll come back to you with the outcome.
Okay.
All right. Colleagues, anyone wants to go?
You go first, Phil. Yeah, I think you had a good interview. I think there was a point in time where he was super impulsive, especially being at the release. I'm seeing some of these violations that were totally avoidable. But with a little time passed, I think he has grasped the teachings of SOTP. A key factor for him, I hope, that he builds that relationship with his PO. He's got to understand that a PO's time is limited too, and there's slots where they can fit you in, and if they can't do it at that time, you got to have a little patience. So I just hope that he understands that part. So I'm in agreement with the DOC recommendation. Let's see. So we'd be going to be an SSG D6 with 48 substance abuse, SOTP aftercare 20B, and the 50A. And if anything I missed, please add.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Meredith?
Yeah. I'm typing down so I don't lose my notes for myself. Okay, so I'm gonna support this recommendation. He's in on a revocation and completed SOTP this summer and was able to acknowledge some of his cognitive distortions, looking at a SOTIP that's low post-treatment this time. I think that perhaps this parole plan will be better for him, going to his dad's instead of the work release, and so I can support it. Let's see, so there was a minor victim, so we'll need that no early discharge, we'll need the limited internet, no contact with minors, 40A, SOTP, aftercare, mental health, medication compliance. I think actually, I don't see it identified in the needs and interventions. And that's something that PO can add if they see it as an issue, becoming an issue. Yeah, no.
Anything else, Jeff?
That's it.
All right. SSG D6. Okay. All right. Mr. Mead, as you got a chance to hear both my colleagues, the only person you didn't get a chance to hear was me. But that means that I'm in agreement with both my colleagues. So with that being said, thought this was a good interview and appreciate the transparency. But, you had some humility going on, and that's refreshing. So knowing that the relationships, you can be better in and not look at the condescending remarks, but being able to have that communication, as my colleague was trying to suggest, hopefully some tougher skin too, you know, just being able to absorb some things, call it breaking bread, so that you can sit down at the table to be able to discuss some challenging conversation content, but being able to just talk it through for the best solution. Because ultimately, what I hear you saying is you want the best solution for the best outcome so that you can practice and showcase behaviors that can be helpful, more importantly for yourself, but to the people that you do want to inspire, if that makes sense.
Does.
Okay, so codes that is coming to you. The SSG D6. That means that we are in agreement with the DOC's recommendation to parole you to your dads. All right, the 20A, that's the limited the internet. The 20B is for no early discharge. The 30A is no contact or indirect contact with minors. The 40A, which is the SOTP aftercare that we talk about, that's ongoing. The mental health, you recognizing, and you also talked about being open to a therapist, but continuing to work with the professionals, as well as medication compliance. You know, just making sure that you are complying with the prescription that is set aside for your well-being, as opposed to you self-indulging and creating your own prescription. We don't want that. All right. And lastly, did we say the 58? No. Okay, I'm sorry. So then lastly, that concludes the interview for today. And the only thing that I will say is wish you the best.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
All right. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, it's like, what did we just watch? When I watch this, I want to jump through the screen. I want to grab each of these parole board members and I want to shake them. If I have to hear them say another, well, that was a great interview. Yeah, that was a great interview. Well, that was a great. It's like, shut up. Are you effing kidding me? I'm so, this iOS of every time I think I'm going to watch another great interview. If I have to hear how many times they say that today, and I'm not just this, I am genuinely pissed off. And it's every interview. I don't feel like doing them. It takes me a different type of energy to do these interviews. Can you imagine this man-child? He absconds. He disappears for what was it? 10 days, 15 days, a sex offender disappears off the face of the earth. And his reason for doing it is because, well, I walked into the room and I said I needed to talk about my problem. And the guy who went back on the chair and said, oh, let's hear about the problem. And my PO didn't say anything. So I said, screw it. So I just left. And you're like, oh, wow. Thanks for being honest with us. That's great. And it's like, this is he's a man-child. What? You're gonna release this cockroach, this dangerous, immature, pathetic little thug? You don't hold him accountable when he says, when I abused the young lady, I was going around sleeping around, always finding another partner. What's their answer? I appreciate that. Super honest answer. Dude, she's 12. You don't correct him on her age. You don't correct him that this is not a partner. This is not a young lady. That's what I really, my mind just wants to explode. He goes on to even say, I sometimes have very negative thoughts where I want to end it all. Imagine if I was having those negative thoughts when they, the parole board and the halfway house people, didn't immediately coddle all my concern. Imagine then. It's like the guy actually, he's 43 years old and he's a man-child. The only place he belongs is in prison. They ask him, what do you think is going to happen differently? Are you going to do well? His answer is, as long as I'm not blindsided by my parole officer, I'll be okay. Then they say, how do we know nothing's going to happen to another 10-year-old girl? Or they don't even use this word. So another victim. I can guarantee no one will happen. I can guarantee it. I promise you. I double promise. And they're like, good answer. I appreciate the answer. Not it won't happen because no, I won't do it. I promise. I guarantee it. He says. 7/19/2021 is a parole violation. 2/17 2020 has a parole violation. 11/20/19 is a parole violation. So he gets 3 parole finally after he absconds, which is running away. Now let me go through his violent history. Sir Richard has here. His violent history. So he has arrested, and it's going to jump around a little bit. Let me see if I can go to the original dates. Jumps around because you have arrest date, and then you have probation, and then you have violation, and it's hard to. But let's just see. So 2004, 12/6/2004, he has DV. He pleads guilty. Now it shows something interesting. It's 12/8. So 2 days later, it says the victim requested dropped and no contact denied. He has count 2, eluding a peace officer. 11/28/2007, he has assault causing bodily injury. He gets a 30-day jail sentence, 25 suspended, so he gets 5 days for that. He has. Then here's where I get a little confused, and that's because it seems that he's been charged and convicted for sex offenses twice, which they just don't get into, and I don't have information, but we have something on we have the 9/14/2011, we have sexual abuse, and we also have 8/29/2014. I'm confused about this. And it could be it's 2 separate charges. It could be that there's I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm sorry. But he's got a lot of DVs, he's got the essays, and his criminal history goes back 20 years, except for when he's locked up. He absconds, and the reasons that he give are just absolutely, like, really, if this, you just like want to laugh at, he's like, sorry, you just have shown no maturity. You don't understand. He's literally blaming them because his feelings were hurt. And for anyone to think that this is going to work out well in any way, you can sit there, you can go sit down and be a parole board member. This is in no one's best interest, not the public, not his, nobody's. And the idea that they sit there and coddle him and say, this is a good parole hearing, it's sick. They're not paying attention. They're not listening, or they're just sick. But that's what this parole board is, and it really pisses me off to watch them. And it's like on today's docket, Sir Richard brought up there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parole hearings, and they're all like, horrible crimes. They're all highlighted red because they're all, the worst of the worst. And every single one of them, they say this was a great hearing. They're psychopaths. I don't know. There's something wrong with them, but hopefully a journalist will pick this up one day, and will be exposed for the dangerous people that they are. And that's part of why we do this. I'm looking forward for that day to happen. And with that, I'll let you go.
And the reason I did what I did was because of my own insecurities and my way I looked at myself, my low opinion of myself. And I really, if it wouldn't have been that young gal, it would have probably been some other woman, because I was just going around trying to look for new reasons to validate myself, and to make myself feel better, like most guys say, go out and do drugs. Well, I was going out and sleeping around, and I was using that to always finding a new partner to revalidate myself, to make myself feel better, to make myself feel like, hey, I'm wanted.
Yeah, I think you had a good interview.
This is a good interview and appreciate the transparency. But, you had some humility going on and that's refreshing.
You didn't want to hurt the girl. This was not a girl. This was a child. This was not someone 15, 16 years old. This was a 4-year-old who had no idea of what you were doing. This was a child.